Hello guys, today is April 2nd, 2015, Thursday, 2:30 something in the morning. Was up all night, or all night so far, reading comics so I can review them for you guys. So let's not waste any more time. First up this week is Spider-Gwen, issue number 3. So last issue we had Spider-Gwen run into the Vulture, kind of got beat up. Well, that's issue 1. Issue 2 is her recovering from that, trying to put her life back together after being thrown in the dump, literally, by the Vulture. And this is her continuing to do that. So we start with her surprising her dad at home. Her dad knows her secret identity already. And they have a conversation, much as Spider-Man ought to do, about responsibility. Although the twist on this conversation is that Captain Stacy tells his daughter that she's not responsible for being a hero. That yes, she has these superpowers, but it's not her responsibility to help people. Which is a nice little inversion of the usual "with great power comes great responsibility" Spider-Man shtick. And then Vulture pops through, so we have a Vulture fight. Gwen versus the Vulture. She seems still gaining her feet pretty much. She kind of gets distracted and suffocated by all this gas that the Vulture is farting into the room. George shoots Vulture in the shoulder. He absconds. Gwen chases him down, and she finally gets the upper hand in this fight. By this page, starts punching him away. And then, of course, in the shadows here, someone else sneaks up to her. It is Punisher, or Frank Castle, not the Punisher yet. He's Captain Frank Castle, I think. Police dude. And he beats up on Gwen. Gwen is very, very hardy. She can take a beating. And Punisher eventually unmasks her, finding out that she's just a girl. He doesn't seem to recognize her. He doesn't know her identity, but he does know that she's a young girl, which kind of puts a little interesting ripple in the story there. And at the end, we discover, well, not we discover, but the house is still kind of filled with Vulture farts. So Ben Parker and May Parker actually help George out of the home, help him get him back on his feet. And I really do hope that means that Ben and May Parker are going to be kind of reoccurring characters in the Spider-Gwen story, because it's going to be interesting having the Parkers around with the Spider-Man. I think it's going to be a pretty neat little little character thing we have going on there if they stick around and are reoccurring. So I'm excited for that. Next up, we have Spider-Man, issue 17. Kind of a start of a new arc. I guess it really started last issue. But we have the villain, the Ghost, here, who was introduced in the end of the last issue. His mission is to bring down Parker Industries, seemingly by any means necessary. So he's pretty much out to kill everyone in Parker Industries. But we start off this book with a dinner between Peter, Anna Maria, Aunt May, and Mr. Jameson. I forget his name. Is it here? That's not here. Anyway, Jameson. Jay. His name is Jay. Jay Jameson. They're all named Jay. And we get a lot of this book is kind of establishing the new Peter Parker Anna Maria relationship, because they're not dating anymore, which she reveals on this first page here, that they're not dating anymore. Which comes as a shock to May, because she's still not she hasn't been filled in about the whole Doc Ock thing yet. But we get this really nice dialogue, this running kind of dialogue. Some of it spoken, some of it just kind of, I guess, telepathy that Anna Maria and Peter share, where Anna, of course, knows Peter's secret identity and is basically covering for him at work and in front of the family. Basically, any time that she needs to cover for him, needs to convince other people that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are not the same person. She's there with an excuse, with a justification for why Peter's acting so weird, or why Peter isn't where Spider-Man is, and all that other things. And she's really good at it. She's one of the characters in this book who really understands kind of how Peter works. She spends a few lines kind of deconstructing his many neuroses that he seems to have, these many blocks that he puts on himself. So kind of an interesting dynamic they have there, where he finally has someone looking out for him who's intelligent, witty, and really has his back, really cares for him. Meanwhile, they go back to Parker Industries in order to test out the supervillain containment thing they're building for the new super jail. When the Ghost breaks in and just starts killing people. The Ghost plan seems to be pretty much locking everyone down in Parker Industries, and then while they're all locked up in the building, picking them off as effectively as possible by turning their machines against them is the first plan. Basically locking them up, sending a bunch of these kill machines to kill them. Of course, Peter makes it out because he's Spider-Man and can make it out of traps like that. But he's also having to deal with protecting all the other scientists in the lab. We also have what's her name? We also have why don't these characters say their name? Sanjani. We also have Sanjani, who has ulterior motives in this. She's and Anna Maria have been working on a nanobot project behind Peter's back because Peter's been so focused on the super jail thing. So she has ulterior motives and is trying to save her own projects while everything is falling apart around her. What else do I write in this note? Nothing else really. So basically we end the story with Peter getting his Spider-Man costume back and going after the Ghost, who has Sanjay trapped. Then we have a little backstory with Black Cat, a little back matter story here, and basically continuing Black Cat's goal of recovering all the items that she lost, stealing back everything that was stolen from her, thieves, kind of a weird whole stealy thing going on. And by the end, she's going after Jay and May, who bought one of her things at an auction, and through this little 3-page story, she really comes into her own. Basically, I'm a lot better and a lot more effective when I'm absolutely ruthless. So we're kind of being teased there that May and Jay are in real danger because Black Cat lost her conscience and is willing to go to any means necessary to take her things back, even means that aren't necessarily necessary. Anyway, I'm liking it. Moving on to Wonder Woman, issue 40, which, to be honest, not really liking all too much. We start with where we left off last issue with Diana versus Donna Troy, and some very stilted dialogue, and the dialogue remains very stiff and stilted and kind of ham-fisted and on the nose through this entire book. It's just not very well written. And it's also, the plot hasn't gone anywhere. The main themes and stuff hasn't really gone anywhere since like issue 2. We're still having Diana having to balance being the queen of the Amazons with wanting the male Amazons to be able to remain on the island, and dealing with responsibility as, trying to figure out this problem with the Amazons while also being a part of the Justice League. And it's a lot of responsibility and stuff because she's torn between 2 worlds, and even on one of these worlds she's torn between 2 genders, and they all want different things. And it is a good setup for a story. You have someone who's has all this responsibility, like many superheroes do, and is trying to balance everything, and she has to balance her home with her work and her home. She has to balance blah blah blah. We get it. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that she has to deal with. But we're on the 5th issue of this arc now, and she hasn't made any progress. So far, no progress has been made. Nothing has been dealt with. Nothing has really gone anywhere. And this again introduces more things. We're reintroduced to these insect monsters, which I kind of forgot about over the previous few issues. And then they reintroduce the Firstborn as a plot element. Apparently, he's still alive in the middle of the earth and shaking things up, making trouble for Diana. Um, and then by the end of this book, because nothing has happened, the Amazons just attack all the men on the island. Which, I mean, I can totally understand their point of view. Nothing else is happening. They're constantly trying to get stuff to happen, and nothing is, so they just finally take matters into their own hands. Like, I shouldn't be sympathizing with what are the villains of this story so much, but because the story has been moving at such a glacial pace, I really do sympathize with them. They are, I totally get being impatient in this moment because I've pretty much given up on this book. I mean, I don't even know how they're going to finish this arc because, as we'll get on later, everything's kind of not everything. A lot of the DC stuff is kind of taking a pause for a month or two, um, and then rebooting itself. So I think like with issue 41, we're getting a whole new Wonder Woman. I think it's gonna be the same writers, but it's gonna be like a new soft reboot thing because of this Convergence stuff, which we'll get into later on in this video. So I'm not even sure if this is going anywhere, and it hasn't really been keeping my attention. I haven't really enjoyed reading it, so I think I'm going to drop Wonder Woman after this week because it really isn't going anywhere, and that's being gentle, I guess. Um, that's the gentle way to say that. Next up, we have Batman Superman Annual number 2. And kind of like Wonder Woman, a lot of the exposition in this book is very on the nose. It's very awkward. Like, we just start, and the first line we hear, or read, rather, is, "Hello, Superman. It is me, the Phantom King, your first and greatest enemy." Like, who talks like that? Who just announces their presence and like, here's the backstory? It doesn't even try to be diegetic at all. It's just characters announcing who they are. It just comes across as really silly, especially for Greg Pak, who's been really good so far. Like, it's still the same writer. I don't know why all of a sudden everything's so on the nose. Just, here I am. Here's what I'm going to do. It's very, very kind of shocking. But yeah, he does pretty much straight up announce his plan, which involves using these weird powers he has to convince people to go after Superman, well, to go after Clark Kent and try and kill Clark Kent. And that would appear to be difficult, considering Clark Kent is pretty much invincible because he's Superman. But thankfully, as the story's conceit, Pak makes Superman use the solar flare, the new superpower introduced by Jeff Johns and John Romita Jr. in the Superman book, which I didn't really enjoy, but Pak seems to get a lot more use out of this power than Johns did. So he uses this power to clear away all this Doomsday dust, so he doesn't get turned into Superman Doomsday again. Which does leave him powerless for 24 hours, which means that now he is vulnerable to all these people who are suddenly coming after him. But again, the actual exposition feels very stilted. He just explains, so he uses the solar He uses the solar flare, and then Superman just explains to himself, I'll be completely depowered for the next 24 hours. I don't know. And I guess they do have to explain it. It's a new power. I get it. It just feels like it could have been done in a way that feels more natural for the character to actually think to themselves. So while Superman is powerless, or while Clark is powerless, he runs into people on this island, scavengers. This island was kind of ruined by Doomsday during the Superman Doomsday thing. Him as Clark Kent, as a reporter, is trying to go to get the story of these people who were caught in the middle of this huge battle. He finds them scavenging for supplies. You know, they're desperate. They're doing anything they can to survive. And while he does this, he's attacked by Man-Bat and a whole bunch of other Batman villains. Luckily, Batman is there to help him because this book is Batman, Superman, not just Superman. But this is still quite the rogues, the gathering of villains. Batman decides it's better to run away, try and bide their time, than it is to fight them head on. Especially now that Clark is powerless and he has other people to worry about saving. And what I love about Batman's character in this book is that he warns Clark against using the solar flare. Like right before Clark uses it, Batman's like, "No, don't do it. That's a dumb idea." And so now that Clark did it and they're under attack, Batman takes every possible excuse he has to be very passive aggressive, constantly saying, "Well, if any of you knew how to fly, we would be in, a lot less trouble. Or if one of you had superpowers, this would be a lot easier to take care of." Basically to Clark, just being passive aggressive at, "I totally shouldn't have done that. That was a dumb move," because he's Batman and he knew best. Because, Batman always knows best. Except that it gets turned on its head, so Clark wants to help out. Batman's like, "No, you're just gonna slow me down. You're used to having superpowers. It's, you're just putting yourself in danger needlessly." So he ties Clark up so he doesn't get in the way, which only leaves Clark more vulnerable for a Killer Croc attack. So I like how this book is playing with which character's in the right, which character's in the wrong, who's being, who's really keeping who safe around here. And of course, Clark finds a way to save himself and save the people he's trying to protect, using only his wits and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to say too much. It's Clark outsmarting the bad guys. Of course, Batman helps by the end. Where does Batman pop back up in this? Here he does. He pops back up with Killer Croc as Clark confronts Bane. And then the two work together to make the two punch each other in the face and knock each other out, essentially. So problem solved, and then we're given one last twist to give this story not so much a happy ending, but definitely not the ending I was expecting. I was expecting it to just end with Clark and Batman being successful. Yay, we fought the villains. But then it turns out Phantom King had another trick up his sleeve, which was actually really, I didn't see it coming. It's a very effective ending. Really makes you go, what? So kudos on Pack for pretty good. I mean, again, some of the exposition kind of stilted, kind of forced and awkward to read, but a good story overall. I enjoyed it. Next up, we got, what else? Batman and Robin, Annual number 3, which starts off with Robin at Wayne Manor, looking up towards the Justice League base, Justice League satellite headquarters is what they call it here, and deciding he wants to go visit his dad, who's on monitor duty, so he repairs a teleporter and warps up to the JLA satellite to hang out with his dad. So nice little nice little, Batman and Robin, dad and son story. As if you've been watching all these other videos where I've talked about Batman and Robin, I like this setup. I like dad bats. So as soon as he gets on the base, they discover a mystery involving an abandoned Apollo moon base. So they decide to go down and check it out to see what's what with the abandoned moon base. And from here on in, this basically turns into Batman meets Doctor Who. Like this is the most Doctor Who Batman story I've ever read. We basically have Batman as the Doctor, explaining the history of all these moon expeditions, and Robin as the companion, um, companioning it up, telling jokes and making things a bit less serious. And even the plot is something like right out of Doctor Who, where they discover, the moon base, something's not quite right, and it turns out that the abandoned Apollo moon base is really full of aliens. And they're not too nice. They end up attacking Batman and Robin, and then basically Batman and Robin have to prevent the aliens from completing their spaceship, so they can't get to Earth and then destroy all of humanity. So, yeah, kind of a very Batman meets Doctor Who story, I think. The dialogue too. The story doesn't take itself too seriously, and you have Batman and Robin in spacesuits. It's not a very serious Batman story. It definitely has a bit of levity to it. It doesn't have a chip on its shoulder. It knows how kind of fun this idea is, and just kind of works with it. Both Batman and Robin do kind of tell a lot of jokes, do make light of the situation a bit, even when it does get dire. You have a moment where I just love this face, Batman's face in this panel. Is like, oh shit, gotta ruin this ship, gotta come up with a plan, and just like this face. Then you have the cover where it's very kind of Jim Lee art style. I don't know if it is Jim Lee, but it's very kind of classic, dark, gritty, dark comic book Batman. And then you have like, oh my god, Batman over there just freaking out. And then Ace the Bat Hound in the issue above it. Yeah, you can't have a serious story with Ace the Bat Hound. It's going to be comical if it has Ace the Bat Hound in it. You have Batman breathing in space, just jumping out of a spaceship in space without a spacesuit. And he's clearly breathing because he's talking. I guess it might not be space. It might be upper atmosphere at this point. But basically, right before he jumped out of the spaceship, Batman reprogrammed it to fly straight into a volcano. So Batman and Robin kill a whole bunch of aliens before they can destroy Earth. And then they look up to the stars, and that is the end of the comic. Again, I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoy the more kind of lighthearted Batman stories. This one has a good mix of sci-fi and Batman and kind of comedy. So I'd pick it up. It's a nice little Batman and Robin story. I really enjoyed it, even though it can get a little silly at times. But that's the part I enjoyed. So that's that. Next up is, how did my notes go? Gotham Academy annual Endgame. Sorry, Gotham Academy Endgame #1, a tie-in to Batman's current Endgame arc, which is going on in the main Batman book written by Scott Snyder. This is a tie-in to that, and it's basically Joker ghost stories. Because of the outbreak of the Joker virus, all the kids in Gotham Academy are camped out in the school, trying not to, get Jokerized. And so they all decide to tell different ghost stories involving the Joker. It's a premise we've seen before. It's a premise we saw in the main Batman book as back matter. Of course, I'm reminded of the Batman the Animated Series episode, or it might be New Adventures episode, where you have all the kids talking about Batman. Legends of the Dark Knight, I think the episode is called, which is very good. If you can find it, watch it. And we get a number of Joker stories. We got the first one where the Joker is a kid who bought a haunted carnival mask. The second one is a Scottish tale. One of the teachers tells where the Joker, and they have the Joker in the Red Hood, of course. Little callback there. Where the Joker is a jester who murders children and becomes the Noid eventually from forget what pizza was. Is that Domino's? Avoid the Noid? Anyway, becomes annoyed. And the final story is the Joker as Bloody Mary, essentially, or the Candyman, one of those things. You look into a mirror, you say a thing, and it haunts you. And yeah, I found this book again enjoyable, kind of cute. As you saw, every story has its own little art style, and I thought each art style was done really well. I really enjoyed all the different looks this book has. I didn't find any of the stories particularly scary or anything, but again, this book skews younger, so I wouldn't really have expected to. But I think they're all neat little stories. They're all very well done. I can't find anything to object in this book. I can't find anything really to complain about. So, yeah, if you think you can go for little kind of campfire stories about the Joker, if you're not sick of that already from Batman, and if you're okay with a story that might not scare you, that isn't, you know, great and mature and gritty and dark and all that, then pick up Gotham Academy. But again, hard to recommend. Just it's a tie-in. It's not a very important tie-in, so I can't recommend it if you're just reading. If you're collecting all the Batman Endgame stuff, I think this is completely skippable. And we do learn one more thing about another character in Gotham Academy that's kind of interesting. I really enjoyed learning it. Kind of turns my interpretation of the character on its head a little bit, which I enjoy. So there we go. That's that. Next up is Arkham Manor, #1, Endgame. Another tie-in. Again, not really necessary for the main Batman plot. I think you really only have to read the main Batman story in order to get all the main Batman all the Endgame plot. They're not really tying in a lot of these things really, really seriously. So, yeah, I didn't like this one as much. It kind of feels incomplete. This one basically tells a story of an employee, a guard at Arkham Manor during the Endgame scenario. He's being interrogated by Bullock, and Bullock here looks very much like his actor in the Gotham television series. So, well, not very much, but he seems to be getting more of that kind of face with the beard and all that than he usually has. So, that's that. Something I noticed. So, he tells the story, the guard tells the story of how he's doing his, Arkham guard stuff, and the Joker pops in and decides to release all the prisoners and has some Joker gas on him, which Jokerizes all the prisoners, of course. And it's up to this guard and a few of the Arkham inmates, Bane, Mr. Freeze, Poison Ivy, and Scarecrow, to stay alive and break out of the asylum, essentially, to escape the asylum and not die. And my main trouble with this book is I like the story up until the ending because it doesn't seem to really end. We have the point where they reach the door, they this big fight with the Joker. The Joker, there's a twist involving the Joker, and then the story just ends. Basically, as we find out the twist about the Joker, we never see everybody escape. We're told that they do escape, and it does make sense. Okay, they were at the front door, and then the thing with the Joker happened, and now he's being interrogated, so just putting all that together, yes, the other people escaped, but we're never shown it. We're never really shown a lot of what happens in between the guard telling his story and the guard being picked up by the police. So it really just feels like it doesn't have a proper ending. Like they spent too much on Act 2 and didn't have enough to really flesh out Act 3 enough, so didn't like this book as much as the other tie-in. Now I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm about to talk a lot about our next book. 1 minute, please. My throat usually gets really dry doing this. There's a lot of talking. So, anyway, moving on to Batman Eternal 52, the last issue of this weekly marathon of a book. Yeah, so we open the last issue of this book with a flashback to the Clue Master setting up all the plans of this. The Clue Master is here during the Court of Owls. We see him kind of coming up with the seeds of his plan. During the middle of the Court of Owl outbreak, he's like, I solved it all. I can finally take down the Batman. But he needs resources. So he goes to the Court of Owls, and he finds Lincoln March, who of course is Owlman. So he finds Lincoln March, and he decides to team up with Lincoln March in order to take down the Batman. We then skip to the present, where Owlman has just killed Clue Master, after Clue Master has basically brought Bruce to his knees, and it is time for the final confrontation between Bruce and Owlman. And I love Owlman's face on this page over here, because it's so silly. I don't know how this face got through any sort of quality control. It is just flat out comical. I cannot take Owlman's face seriously here. I don't even think I can make that expression. Is that it? That's not an angry face. That's not a I haven't even hurt you face. I'm not sure what sort of face is. It's just a ridiculous face, and I love it. I saw this face, and I took a picture, and I sent it to my friends. I was like, oh my god, this is the final boss of Batman Eternal. That guy. So, moving past Owlman's face, we have Bruce versus Owlman. Bruce, of course, running on fumes at this point. Just been through hell. Basically, just dead man walking. And then you have Owlman, who is a Talon, who can't really die. So, seems a bit one-sided. And as they fight, Owlman crashes into Gotham, Times Square sort of area. And basically tells Bruce that I will kill you here, and you will die, and everybody will see that you're just a man, and that the Batman isn't special, the Batman will die out, everything you ever worked for will die with you, that sort of thing. And he gets really close, and then basically as soon as he's done saying this, Jim Gordon turns on the bat signal literally everywhere in Gotham, and basically says, you know, we need a hero, and it's going to be Batman, because all of Gotham City is Batman. Everybody in Gotham City is Batman, and it's all your job to be the Batman now, because things have really gone to shit, and we need Batman. And basically everybody becomes Batman. So, spoilers, trying to get out of Gotham, she crashes her bike, and some random dude helps, is like, oh man, you're one of those costume heroes, thanks for everything, now it's my job to pay you back. We have we have a Talon, I forget his actual name, but we have the Talon guy from the Talon book, which I don't think he's running anymore. He rescues Red Hood and Batgirl from a collapsing building, and Alfred and his daughter, I forget her name, basically called in everybody whoever worked in Gotham. So we have Bluebird over here, Batwoman, Black Canary, Katana. We already saw Talon and Red Hood and Spoiler and Batgirl. So everybody in Gotham is going in on this, including some of the villains. So Killer Croc is rescuing people from a fire. Meanwhile, in the city center, Owlman and Bruce are still battling it out before Batman gets a very, very Spartacus moment. The whole, Stephanie declaring that she's Batman now. Then you have the whole of the Bat family, all of Gotham's superheroes ganging up on Owlman at once. Basically doing the, we're all Batman, it's time for all of us to be heroes. Very, very heartwarming, very touching, as you have Bruce just lying there. And of course, Owlman escapes. Bruce is like, I gotta go after him. Gordon's like, no, dude, chill. You've done enough. It's our job now to save the city, because You've taught us all how. And then we skip ahead a bit. So 1 week later, things are returning to normal. We have Jason Bard and Vicky Vale kind of catching up and making amends. We have Batman back in action. Bruce Wayne healed up within a week, I guess. I guess it's not that traumatic what he's been through. He can get back on his feet within a week. Basically saying, Selina, you've gone too far. I used to give you the benefit of the doubt, but now I can't do that anymore. You're off the deep end. You're a strict villain now. And Selina takes on the challenge on the chin, basically. Takes it on the chin. So she's ready for it. We have Corrigan reconnect with Batwing, and we're hinting at seeing Batwing in future issues of Gotham by Midnight. Corrigan talks about starting his Midnight Division, his Midnight, what is that? His Midnight Shift. So that obviously becomes Gotham at Midnight. It says that they could always use Batwing around, so that's a neat little teaser. We have Barbara catching up with her father, and then we have Red Hood at a bar. Red Hood has a crush on Barbara. It's kind of cute. He decides not to tell her, though, and instead gets drunk with Arsenal. Or gets drunk before and then meets Arsenal because he's too afraid to tell her. And then we catch up with Stephanie, Harper Row, Cullen, and Tim Drake. And Tim Drake and Stephanie Brown meet cute, of course, because in pre-52 they had a thing going on, and so now they meet and they like each other. That's kind of cute. So couples everywhere. We got Jason and Vicky, we got Red Hood and Barbara, we got Tim and Stephanie. Just love is in the air. Owlman gets found and recaptured by the Court of Owls, and Batman is back on bat duty. Status quo achieved, I guess. I mean, some things are new. We got a few new sidekicks and everything, but for the most part, everything is wrapped up very nicely in this book. Batman Eternal, overall thoughts? It was a fun story. Yes, it was a bit overcomplicated at times. It was a bit winding. I thought the setup was really great. I really enjoyed the first few issues. Kind of lulled around, I don't know, 20-ish, but it always found nice ways to peak. It always found new things to pull me back in and to get me interested, which is nice in a story that's this long. The pacing, it's hard to do better pacing in 52 issues than you had in Batman Eternal, so congrats on everyone who worked on that. For just never being boring too many issues in a row. That must have been really hard to do, seriously, to keep the book running this long and to not have a lull for multiple issues on end. That takes a lot of talent, a lot of skill. Do I wish it were shorter? Yeah, I do, because then I wouldn't have spent so much money on it. It'd be easier to pace if it were shorter, I feel. I don't know why it's 52 issues. I don't know if that's an editorial mandate. I don't know if that's really how long they felt it would take to tell the story. But overall, really enjoyable story. I really liked it. I really liked kind of the celebration of all the Batman stuff. I liked how they brought in almost every villain that they possibly can, including adapting some from like the Batman 60s television show for comics in really original ways. I liked how the story ended up ending. I liked how it was Clue Master all along. I liked the big reveal, and then I liked how even in the comic they say, yes, it was Clue Master, it was this nobody all along, but he didn't get it, that he was always a nobody. Even if he succeeded, he still would have been a nobody, because he's a nobody comic book character who nobody cares about. So of course he couldn't win. Yeah, the whole Batman and Spartacus thing, you know, everyone says, I'm Batman, oh, I'm Batman, oh, I'm Batman. That got to me because I'm a huge sap. So, yeah, Batman Eternal gets a thumbs up, recommendation for me. Maybe pick it up in trade. I don't know how they're gonna do this. I read maybe two hardcovers or something. I don't know, but yeah, that was a fun little adventure, and I'm gonna be reading more Batman after this, definitely. I mean, I already was before this, but this didn't turn me off Batman in any way. And it feels, 52 issue mega series like this, it feels like an appropriate 75th anniversary sort of thing that they did. So kudos all around on the Batman Eternal team. And then we have, moving on to Future's End, issue 48. The end of Future's End. And this book is very different from the ending to Batman Eternal. So we start off with Tim, Batman Beyond Tim, waking up in a veritable Garden of Eden. We have statues commemorating all the superheroes. He thinks he's won, and then we find out that no, he hasn't won, and that was all an illusion, and the Earth is still gone to shit. He failed, and as we learn in this book, as he confronts Brother Eye one more time, and he confronts Mr. Terrific, and he gets rescued by a whole bunch of freedom fighters. Well, he gets ambushed by Brother Eye, and then he gets rescued by a whole bunch of freedom fighters. We basically end, through all this adventure, through all this harrowing, trying to, last minute, we got to have one more chance. There's got to be one more way to fix this. This book ends with Brother Eye winning. This is the final page of Future's End, with Tim saying that he hasn't won yet, but there's no more. After this, it's just ads. There's no more to this book. Future's End ends with Brother Eye winning, for all intents and purposes. So definitely not the direction I expected it to go in. That's definitely a twist. But it's probably brave. I don't know whether or not it's good yet. I'm still going to need some time to digest, but it's definitely something. It's definitely something. So that is that. There we go. And we have one more book this week. I'm just going to take one more sip of water because I am parched. One more book this week, and it is another biggie. Moving right from Future's End to DC's next huge big event, Convergence #0. First of all, gotta say, love the cover. I like all the different Supermen, reality breaking apart. Yes, kind of cliche for a DC crossover, but I just really like it. I like Superman. I like the blue, bright, primary colors, so there we go with that. Meanwhile, it's a very kind of hard to understand issue 0. This takes place arguably in the middle of the Superman Doomsday arc. Superman is warped outside of space-time, where he runs into Giant Brainiac from Future's End. I don't know if he was in Superman Doom. I didn't read Superman Doom because I don't really like Scott Lobdell. Anywho, he meets Giant Brainiac, who puts him in a trap, and shows Superman exactly where he is, which is the nexus, the point in space and time where every Superman in every reality dies. And Brainiac talks about how Brainiac really wants to kill Superman. That's all Brainiac really wants to do, besides collect all the information in the universe, is kill Superman. Yet Superman always manages to stop him, and despite Superman always winning, Superman always inevitably dies, giving up his life for the greater cause. And then Brainiac, after showing the New 52 Superman all of these other Supermen dying, Brainiac goes off to find the New 52 Superman's world, and collect that, add that Metropolis to his collection. Meanwhile, Superman breaks out of his trap, breaks out of his chains, and explores the planet that Brainiac trapped him on. And on this planet, he finds other Brainiacs. And, well, it's this one Brainiac, and he's transforming into all these other versions of Brainiac, and he shows Superman all of these other versions of Metropolis. Meanwhile, Superman, of course, just wants to get back to his Metropolis, wants to save it from Brainiac. Doesn't quite realize he's trapped in a place outside of places. He is a very stubborn superhero. But not Brainiac explains the history of this place, how Brainiac found a living planet and terraformed it to his will so that he can put a whole bunch of his collection onto this planet, and then the planet will support all of these different cities that he collects. And so this isn't really Brainiac, this is the planet. It is the planet's consciousness that has just taken the form of his master, Brainiac. So as this Superman tries to go back to his dimension, to his reality, the planet makes a consciousness for itself and decides that, well, that hero is very stubborn. I can't just sit by and watch all of these heroes basically invade me. I am going to pit them all against each other to find out which one of them deserves to win. Basically, the living planet where Brainiac stores all of his cities is setting up a tournament to find out which is the best, who are the strongest heroes, and that's our setup for Convergence. And then at the end here, we get a guide to all of these cities, to all of the different multiverses that will be featured in Convergence. We get a very healthy mix, all the way from Golden Age to Modern Age. Lots of Elseworlds books, too. So, very healthy selection. And I enjoy that they have this guide to help people catch up on any of these universes that they might not be familiar with. But we really do get a spread from everywhere. Almost everybody's represented, which is really cool. This basically seems like DC doing Multiversity without Grant Morrison. I was talking to the guy at my comic book store, John, and he was like, DC must have heard what Grant Morrison was doing with Multiversity, but knew that they couldn't get Grant Morrison to write another Crisis event, so they just decided to let Morrison do his own thing and then take all Morrison's ideas and then do their own crossover event with them. But if it turns out even half as good as Multiversity, I won't be able to complain, because that's a good story. And it's a bit of a rocky start, but this is setting up, it's a bit too, I don't want to say up its own ass, but it's a bit too trying to be Grant Morrison, but not having the Grant Morrison-y enoughness to quite pull it off. But yeah, for an issue 0, it sets up the plot nicely enough. And the guide is, again, really helpful. Really sets up, okay, this is what we're in for. These are going to be the characters involved. So get ready for one heck of a ride, hopefully. And for the last few minutes until I run out of things to say about this, I just want to say it's kind of an interesting time in comics right now for me reviewing them and reading them, because right now we have both Marvel and DC doing this huge crossover events. We have Convergence in DC, and we have Secret Wars over. Is it Secret War? We have Final Secret War, and I'm just going to call it Secret Wars. We have Secret Wars over in Marvel, and these are both crossover events where the multiverses for Marvel, you have the entire Marvel multiverse or universe timeline collapsing in on itself, and that's going to end in a kind of a soft reboot of Marvel continuity where they're shifting everything and they're combining the Ultimate Marvel universe with the 616 Marvel universe. And you have DC, which is, I mean, it took long enough, but they're finally seeming to merge the New 52 universe and the pre-52 universe together and gonna spit out something entirely new from there. So reading these books, it almost feels like, why bother? Like, these are literally the last moments of these dying worlds. And we know just from, you know, the meta story that it's not going to really matter canon-wise what happens for the next few months because they're at the end of it, it's just going to be pressing a big reset button, um, and then starting. Okay, not issue ones all over again, but here's the new status quo, and then they're going to do that with Marvel, and DC's going to do that with all their stories. And so reviewing these books, like especially these ones, like the final ones before all the shit starts going down, it's kind of like, you know, why? I mean, I'm just reading them for the enjoyment of the story, yes, and I'm still doing that with a lot of books, Batman, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Spider-Man, you know, just because I know I'm going to enjoy reading the books. But I feel that actually reading comics loses a lot when, like, a big chunk of the appeal of reading comics is that each comic book matters, each plays into the larger continuity, this larger universe that has been built for 50, 70 something years, you know? And knowing that it's just going to be reset kind of takes that away. It's like, well, this story won't matter to the bigger picture. It's just something I've been thinking about recently. And I mean, I'm still probably going to do these reviews every week or every week that I can. But it was just something I was thinking about. And if you guys have any thoughts like, oh, don't review the story, I'm only reading this for its part in the bigger picture, and if that's not going to matter, then it's not worth reviewing. That's what I'm feeling about some stuff. Wonder Woman. But other things, I don't know. Just some thoughts that were banging around in my head here. But yeah, that is that. Another long video. I couldn't really find a way to split these 10 books into 2 shorter videos that made me feel good about it. Yeah, so thank you for watching. If you did make it through this entire video, thank you. I hope you enjoyed. If you want more of this every week, please subscribe. If you like this video, please tell me down below. And yeah, hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching.